What gives you the most optimism about the future of the travel industry? Where's the happy news?
For me, it's about human connection. 20 years ago was the advent of social media, then our mobile devices taking over our lives. Now we're being pushed into certain algorithms. And unfortunately, there is a lot of bad thing that goes on. Mobile phones were supposed to make our lives easier, and they're actually often drawing us apart. And the news environment and news cycle does feel a little bit toxic and difficult. And geopolitically, that certainly feels the case. But I think ultimately what Intrepid does is we obsess about human connection, and we obsess about the beauty and the power of that, and about all of those things I said earlier, getting people out to see the world, to meet local people, to try the food, to experience their culture, to get a better understanding about their way of life. And that's what we do in the travel industry. We bring people together. We provide people with amazing experiences. And I just think increasingly with the difficulties people are experiencing online, that there'll be more and more of a desire to have those human connections, particularly in the sense of the loneliness pandemic that is upon us as well. So that's why I'm hopeful. That's why I'm optimistic. I believe ultimately that the world needs more intrepid people, and that's what myself and all of the team at Intrepid were squarely focused on trying to do that.
Welcome to the Best Part of Travel podcast, brought to you by Arival, where we take you inside the business of destination experiences. I'm Janelle Visser, and I'm here with Stephen Joyce.
Hello.
And today we're doing part 2 of multi-day tours, where we're going to go in depth with the CEO of one of the world's most well-known multi-day tour brands, Intrepid Travel. We'll talk everything from building a brand to sustainable travel to leadership and, of course, AI thrown in there somewhere. So to kick things off, Stephen, what is the first thing you think of when I say multi-day tour?
Safari.
That was fast.
Yes, well, and because Safari was the first multi-day tour I ever experienced when I was 10 years old with my family in Kenya.
Yeah.
And I think even today, a lot of when people think of multi-day tours, they think of seeing the big 5 game animals in a place like Africa, or going on a gorilla photography expedition or whatever. Like, a lot of it tends to be adventure oriented, or the idea of adventure or soft adventure. But I think it's multi-day encompasses a lot more than that, obviously. That's just the first thing that popped in my head, because that was my first experience with multi-day. So how about you? What's the first thing you think of when I say multi-day?
Yeah, for me, it's got to be New Zealand. And I know that probably won't surprise anyone who's heard me talk about New Zealand before. But the reason is because that was the first multi-day tour that I did. And I didn't know much about the tourism industry before that. I had traveled on my own quite a bit, but never in a group context. And when I was planning my trip, I had this idea of what I wanted to do. I wanted to go to Australia and then New Zealand, and there were like specific flights that I needed. And because I couldn't figure out how to do that on my own, I ended up working with a travel agent, because I wanted to fly from here to here, fly from here to here, but not all in one trip. And I wanted to do it without being super expensive. Someone recommended a travel agent to me. She was able to figure out my route for a reasonable cost. And then she upsold me and was like, hey, you sound like you would really enjoy this tour of the South Island of New Zealand. And I was like, oh, that actually sounds amazing. So I signed up for a 2-week-long multi-day trip around the South Island of New Zealand, and it was an incredible experience. And so that is what I think of when I think of multi-day. That's the first thing that comes to mind.
Yeah, and wow, you have hit on so many things
I know.
in that statement around why multi-day is where it is, and why people love multi-day, and also why people book multi-day through travel advisors, right? You literally nailed all of those.
I know.
Thank you for joining us on today's episode.
We're done now. We're done.
Janelle just finished it for us. Thank you. We're good.
Well, and I'll add to it before we go on, since we're in story time, because I did go on, obviously, to work in the travel industry, first as a tour guide, and work for a few years in Vancouver, West Coast of Canada. And then I went out to work for a travel startup based in the East Coast of Canada. And Out Here Travel, amazing startup company, may they rest in peace, unfortunately didn't survive COVID. But that company was doing 26-day, multi-day tours around the East Coast of Canada. 26 days. They were incredible. But my point is that we had a lot of people who came on the tour, and they were all like, this is such an amazing tour. I can't believe you guys aren't sold out all the time. Why don't more people know about this tour? And it was like,
Mm-hmm.
well, because how do you bridge that gap between building an amazing tour company and then getting people to come do your tour? And
Yeah,
it's,
it's definitely not a build it and they will come type thing, right?
yeah,
Like you have to find creative ways to get the word out.
yeah. And so that brings it back to today's topic, because
Mm-hmm.
we're talking to a tour company that has managed to figure that out. People know who they are. People want to take their trips, and people will book because of their brand in a lot of cases and because of their name.
Mm-hmm.
So we'll get into that conversation. But first, a message from our podcast sponsor.
Protect Group offers a service called Refund Protect. The way it works is that an operator or reseller offers Refund Protect at the time of checkout for an extra fee, usually around 10% of the ticket price. If the guest can't go because of some unforeseen circumstance, they request a refund from Refund Protect and they get 100% of their money back, including the fee. The best part is the operator keeps 100% of their revenue and they make a little extra. So to find out more, go to protect.group/bestpartoftravel.
All right. So super excited to share this conversation with James Thornton, who's the CEO of Intrepid Travel. I don't want to play favorites, but I feel like this might be one of my favorite interviews that you and I have done together. It was
so good.
Yeah, it was such a great conversation. And we don't often do the interviews together. Like, it's either you or me a lot of the times, but if we make it work to do them together, and this particular conversation, just, I think we could have gone for hours. I wouldn't have, out of respect for his time, but it was just such a great conversation. So I'm really excited to share it.
Well, when he comes to Arrival, we can go and have dinner with him or something and sit
Hint,
down
hint,
and spend.
wink, wink,
So
James.
yeah. If you're listening, James, there's a dinner invite for you
Yeah,
at
there
Arrival.
you go. Or we could just go hang out with him in Australia.
Yeah, just go
Yeah.
hang. Oh yeah, that's a better idea. We'll come
Yeah.
visit you in Australia.
Okay, cool. So yeah, but before we get into it, multi-day. We talked about it last time. We talked about tech. Now we're talking about tours, and we're talking about tour operators and some of the issues with multi-day. So what do you think people should have in mind as we go into this conversation?
I think understand that Intrepid has been around for a while because of the nature of their brand and their exposure and the fact that they are expanding into new markets and they're a very profitable, very well-run organization, large scale multi-day operation. They probably still suffer from the same things that smaller operators do in terms of the logistics and all that sort of stuff, but they have really good processes in place. So this is one of those examples where we talked about in the earlier episode about multi-days that, they're passion-based, it's lifestyle-based. These are operators that don't necessarily know the business behind their passion. Intrepid knows business and has a passion. And I think what really struck me with this interview is just how they lead they have a very clear understanding of what their why is and what their mission is in the world. And everything stems from that. And I think it's very clear in how they do business that they are true to their core values. And it's so refreshing. And it was a great part of the conversation as a whole.
Yeah, well, and to that point as well, part of the impetus for this interview was that they made an announcement about a change in their policy relating to sustainable travel and climate strategy. And for a company that has been leading the charge on that, so to speak, for them to make a change is a pretty significant thing. So that was part of the impetus for the interview. It's not the only thing we talk about, it's in there. But it's interesting to see how that's not just one policy thing, but it's wrapped into the whole package of what they do and who they are, and in such an integrated way. So yeah, excited to get into this.
Let's get into it.
Let's get into it. All right. So thank you, James, for joining us for the Best Part of Travel podcast. We're super excited to have you. To start, could you share maybe a little bit about your journey and what drew you to Intrepid and eventually to this role that you're in now?
Of course, no problem. It's great to be with you, Janelle, Stephen. So my journey to Intrepid was maybe a bit different to most of the travel industry. I came out of university and I joined a private client asset management company, which is a boring way of saying I was going to spend the next 40 years of my life making rich people richer. And I did that for a few years and I was approaching my mid-20s and I thought, surely there's got to be more than life than this. And I just want to do something I was passionate about. And for me, I have two passions, sport and travel. Sport, not good enough to pay for a professional team. I explored the travel industry, and there was a job as a sales rep for a small privately owned Australian adventure travel company called Intrepid in the UK. They were expanding their presence in the UK. And I thought, oh, that sounds like fun. I'd get out and see the world and have some fun, and maybe I'll end up back in the corporate world, or maybe I won't. And I applied for the job, and they offered it to someone else. But fortunately for me, and maybe fortunately for Intrepid, that person actually rejected the job. And so a month later, I got the call up. I was a sales rep at Intrepid, and that was just over 20 years ago now. And I've been very fortunate in the course of the last 20 years to live and work all across the world, particularly based in London or in Melbourne. And I've been Intrepid's CEO for about 8.5 years now. So it's been a fun and good journey.
That sounds like a fun journey. And I had a similar experience coming to Arival where I didn't get the job the first time I applied. Maybe I shouldn't say that, but I did eventually end up getting the job, and it turned out to be such an amazing thing.
I think it's a really good thing for people to hear about stories that don't seem linear or direct, or people just assume because you became CEO that somehow everything was perfect, and it most certainly wasn't. So keep trying if at first you don't succeed, I reckon.
Yeah. Well,
there's also this line that exists between corporate finance or what would be considered traditional corporate careers, finance, lawyer, whatever, that end up getting involved in the tours, activities, and experiences space. And it's exactly like what you said. It's like there's got to be more to life than just making other people rich. And maybe there's more to life than that. And what are you really passionate about? And people identifying, this is what I'm passionate about, and this is what I want to do for the rest of my life. And I think it's just interesting to hear that, because often people think the career of choice is in finance or whatever. And for a lot of people, it ends up being that they leave these what would be considered very lucrative careers to go into tours and activities and experiences, which is not traditionally seen as a kind of the financial powerhouse or one that is as lucrative.
Yeah, I agree.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
So tell us, like, what makes Intrepid meaningful for you?
Oh, what makes that such a, I don't know, wide-ranging but good question. I think one of the reasons why I love working Intrepid is I really believe in our style of travel, just that ability to connect people, to have human experiences. I think at the moment, the world is at a bit of a difficult point geopolitically. We're more divided than we seem to have ever been. We seem to be pulled apart by the loneliness pandemic. We've got the climate crisis. But I always find that when people travel on Intrepid trips, and if it's my friends or family or connections or people that you know, invariably, 99.5% of the time, they have the most amazing experience. And that might not be because of the iconic site that they saw that they originally thought would be the key reason for traveling on the trip, but it's often down to the meal that they had, or the interaction that they had with a local person, or the traveling through the destination and just having human connections along the way. And for me, what I think makes Intrepid so special is that every single day, thousands of people now at a good kind of size and scale get to have those connections. And it doesn't matter what your race, religion, ethnicity, gender is, that we have far more similarities than we do differences. And that's what you see every single day at Intrepid. So Intrepid is about getting off your mobile phone, away from those social algorithms, and having human connections with local people. And typically people have a great time doing that. So it's a great kind of thing to do, I guess.
I love that. And at the last Arival, I think actually, well, Stephen, you can probably speak to this because you were in the room. They talked about de-screening and this movement towards getting off of screens and how that's drawing people into travel experiences more, in particular, multi-day travel.
Yeah, for sure. And just your comment too about that there's more of us in common than there are differences. And I think that's something that, Janelle, you and I talk about all the time. I think we've mentioned it almost on every episode.
Yeah.
Is that's really part of what makes experiences so meaningful for people, is that you get to explore a place and the people in a way that you don't often get to.
Yeah, I think one of the things we try to do at Intrepid is do a lot of human-centered storytelling. So we try and spotlight real people. We try and spotlight real communities and real moments. And we do that through the way we bring our brand to life. And I think it helps create that great connection. And that, de-screening is a more articulate way of saying it for sure.
Well, I think it's interesting you mentioned the brand, because we've talked also recently about this at Arival, that brand recognition in tourism, especially in tourism activities, is actually a really difficult thing. And some have even suggested that in this age of AI, brand is dead or brand is dying. But Intrepid doesn't seem to have that problem. A lot of people know the name Intrepid. My friends who don't work in tourism know the name Intrepid. I guess my question is, why do you think that is? And what advice would you offer other companies who are trying to build their brand or worried that they won't be able to have a brand
Stand out. Yeah.
stand out?
Yeah,
Yeah.
I think your brand's got to stand for something. And Intrepid, our focus is on immersive experiences that deeply resonate with conscious travelers. And we do that by offering kind of consistent, high quality products that deliver on our brand promise every single time. And we've got lots of loyal customers that come with that. But I think that the big thing for Intrepid was always that people are familiar with kind of sand and sun, they're familiar with cruising. They might be familiar with kind of city tours or even large group touring, but often there was a bit of a lack of understanding about what does it mean to do a small group immersive trip, average group size of 10 people, local transport, local accommodation. What does it really mean? And we felt that we needed to bring our brand more prominently to market so that people could get more awareness around our style of travel. And that was a big kind of shift that we made coming out of the pandemic. If you look pre-pandemic, 95% of our spend was digital. In terms of acquisition, coming out of the pandemic, we made a big, bold move to split to 50-50 from brand. And that brand investment's really paid off. We started with this big campaign on the London transport network in the summer of 2022. And it was with the connotation that travel is back for good. And it was obviously a nice play on words, given the coming out of the pandemic. And it just really resonated. All of our brand metrics started to perform well. Our inquiry metrics perform well. And it gave us the confidence to roll out that campaign across many of the other kind of metro markets that we work around the world in. And ever since then, we've continued to invest more and more in brand and that kind of visual storytelling, that identity. And it's been very powerful for us, that human-centered storytelling that I mentioned earlier. And I think it's helping people understand the importance of who Intrepid is, what we stand for, and the style of travel that we offer. And it's probably one of the reasons why we're growing at nearly 20% compound average growth rate. So I would encourage any brand to try and lean into it, but it's worked very well for us.
So it's really understanding and sharing your why, right? When we talk about like why you do the things that you do, you have a very clear vision of, and Intrepid in general, everyone that works there has a very clear vision of what it is that Intrepid offers and what you do. And everyone shares in that vision. So really, for everyone else that's out there that is trying to figure out how do we stand out, it's understand what your why is and be brutal in some cases about really emphasizing that why to the larger community, right?
I think two other things as well, Stephen. I totally agree with the why. I think one thing is you've got to make your brand stand for something. And if you try and make your brand to try and appeal to everyone, it'll appeal to no one. So we're really clear in that we're trying to connect with conscious, connected, curious travelers. And that means that for some people, Intrepid won't be for them. And I think the second part is it's just as important in your building of your brand, you have really engaged people. Intrepid works very hard on this balanced stakeholder approach. We're not just incentivized on revenue growth or profit growth, but we're incentivized heavily on purpose outcomes, on customer outcomes, and on our people outcomes. And I think one of the reasons Intrepid's brand has shown up so strongly coming out of the pandemic is we have a very engaged workforce. And I think that's helped us in terms of that clarity of brand messaging that we put to market in every single market. And while we have a global tone of voice, we try and implement that with regional nuance. If we're here in Toronto, which is where I am today, or at my home base of Melbourne or my original home base of London, we try and bring in that local flavor with that global overlay. But yeah, people engagement is a super important part of showing your brand up strongly.
Yeah.
And so you mentioned that phrase travel for good and conscious traveler. So let's talk a little bit more about that. What does that mean to you and to Intrepid, and what are you doing on that front to make travel for good? Because travel gets a bad rap sometimes. We hear over tourism and people shooting tourists with water guns and the pressure that it puts on communities where there's really a lot of tourism happening. So tourism for good, what does that mean to you?
Yeah, I think Intrepid's always tried to balance being a business that tries to balance having a purpose and profit. From the very outset of what we did, the reason why Intrepid was founded was never to make our founders personally wealthy. It was to make sure that we believed there was a better style of travel out there. And if you go back to the very inception in 1989, you could travel on large buses, you could travel independently using guidebooks, Lonely Planets or Rough Guides, but there wasn't really anything between the two that drew in the benefits of great independent travel with a little bit of structure, but making sure that the travel experience benefited the local community. And I think the old-fashioned view of travel is that you solely exist to provide amazing experiences for your customers. And don't get me wrong, any good travel company must absolutely do that, because if you don't provide your customer with an amazing experience, they simply won't book with you again, they won't refer to you again, and your brand will struggle. But you've got to make sure that local communities benefit from the travel experience. And I think we've seen where that's got out of whack as you use those examples of, be it over tourism or be it some of the social or natural disasters that might be associated with climate change. Travel has to benefit those local communities. Otherwise, it's going to come up in the headlines for all of the wrong reasons. So at Intrepid, travel for good means making sure that communities benefit just as much as customers benefit. And that means the very inception of how Intrepid started was using predominantly local accommodation. It was trying to use different types of local transport so that we didn't necessarily put our own vehicles into a destination which didn't need them. It was to make sure that when we visited a country, we ate the local food more than we tried to eat Western chain or buffet food, for example. So the very nature and inception of the product was always about making sure that it benefited local people. So again, that Travel Back for Good campaign that we came up with in 2022 coming out of the pandemic was super nice play on words at the time, but it was also very much drawing us back to the original inception and meaning of the Intrepid brand that was created in 1989.
Oh, okay. Sorry, I thought Stephen was going to say something. Thank you for sharing. And Stephen was like, no, okay, that's fine. He's just in awe. He's just in awe.
Oh.
So we often hear this as a tension, this idea of like purpose and profit. And if you are going to spend your time worrying about purpose and investing in sustainability, for example, that maybe that's going to make you less profitable as a business. What's your take on that?
My take is a firm disagreement with that, and that won't come as a surprise. One of the things that we found, and I can actually talk about it with real good specific example. If you go back to when Intrepid was 2011 to 2015, we did a joint venture with TUI PLC, and we created something called the Peak Adventure Travel Group, and it was pulling together a series of adventure travel brands. Now, TUI was a FTSE 100 business, and it was very much focused on profit being the kind of key deliverable that was the focus. And during that period of time, Intrepid didn't grow very well, and in fact, we weren't necessarily that profitable. We lost our way a little bit. It was weird, the focus on profits made us less profitable and less purposeful. And when we took the business back under the private ownership of our founders, Darryl Wade and Jeff Manchester, in 2015, we set out with a very clearly articulated kind of rebirth strategy for Intrepid that was about two things: growing the market for sustainable experience-rich travel, and secondly, trying to operate a business that balanced having a strong purpose and profit. And purpose had always been at the core of Intrepid, but as we'd been in that FTSE environment, lost our way on it. And that's what led us to become a certified B Corp in 2018. We made that commitment in 2015. It's one of the first things that we did coming out of TUI. And to be honest, the more we started to do strong purpose activities again in 2015, and we took steps like being the first tour operator to ban elephant rides, becoming that certified B Corp. I think we were one of the larger travel companies at the time to make that move. It was seen as fairly revolutionary. The more, and then articulated and told that story well, the more that led to us becoming a commercially successful business. And so we've certainly found that by investing in our business and by investing in purpose and our local model, it's helped strengthen our business success. And for the past 3 years coming out of the pandemic, we've had the 4 years coming out of TUI, we had 4 record financial years, and the 3 years then coming out of the pandemic, we've then had 3 record financial years, beating those 4 years before the pandemic. So I think Intrepid is proof that record financial and impact results can go together. And it's old-fashioned nature in business that to be profitable, you have to somehow be doing bad by the world. And to be purposeful, you have to be an NGO. And I just believe both of those are actually rubbish. And the more you invest in purpose, the more that engages your people. The more you have engaged people, typically have more engaged customers, leads to more sales. If you run a decent business, should lead to more financial returns. And that enables you to invest in more purpose. Yeah, I think Intrepid's been good proof that purpose and profit can balance very nicely together and that everyone can benefit.
That's a very good example of building into purpose, into the core structure of the business. That's not when you approach a business purely from a profit-driven standpoint and where shareholder primacy is key metric for success for the business. Clearly, that's a very different approach than the one that you're taking, it being a purpose-driven organization. One of the things that we see, and this is something that came out of Focusrite research, is the sustainability gap, right? Like that difference between what people are actually saying that they're willing to spend their money on and then what they actually spend their money on. And one of the big arguments has always been, from our standpoint, Janelle and I have talked about this in the past, is that if you build sustainability into the core product, then there isn't really a sustainability gap because the product, by virtue of being offered, is already sustainable. And it seems to me that's very much the case with Intrepid, is that you don't offer a sustainable and a non-sustainable product and at different prices and say, hey, you can get the less sustainable one for cheaper because we've decided to use cheaper vehicles that produce more emissions or whatever the case may be. It's just one product and sustainability is baked in. And so would you say that is really an approach that the travel industry in general should be taking, is bake it in?
Yeah, totally. I mean, I don't know a customer who phones Intrepid up, or in fact rolls into a travel agent or goes online or does anything that says, I want sustainability as my number one criteria. First and foremost, the customer wants to have a great holiday, a great travel experience. But I think more and more the expectation is that travelers also expect to have stronger sustainability or purpose-led credentials as a result of their trip. So I use the analogy of it's like a supermarket. In a supermarket at the moment, you have a health food aisle. And if you go into supermarkets today, those health food aisles seem to be expanding a bit more and more. If you go back 10 years ago, you might have had a couple of health products. Go back 15 years ago, you had no health products in the supermarket. Well, it's a little bit like that with travel. When I started 20 years ago, if I ever mentioned sustainable travel, people would look at me thinking I was a hippie hanging off the side of a mountain. Whereas today, sustainability isn't just a nice to have, it's an integral part of any travel conference, of any travel product. And the ones that seem to be growing faster than anyone, and Intrepid is double the size that we were before the pandemic. We're growing at a compound average growth rate of 20% year on year. There are not many 36-year-old companies that are growing at the rate that we are. And it's because of the credentials that we have. And so more and more, I see that those companies that are leaning into having stronger sustainability credentials baked into their product offerings will be the ones that will succeed more and more, because customers don't necessarily ask for it from the outset, but once they experience it, they expect it more and more on their repeat travel experiences.
Yeah, it's interesting to use the health food aisle example, because if you have a health food aisle, then the assumption is everything else in the store is not healthy.
Right.
That's right. Yeah. And that's it.
So is sustainability, is that even the right word anymore? Or does sustainability need a rebrand itself?
Yeah, I think it needs a rebrand, Janelle. Yeah, I think it needs a rebrand. The concept that, in fact, it's a word we're, in a way, trying to use a little bit less. I think sustainability is a shared responsibility, but we need to see more action from not just companies, but also from governments, from legislators, in terms of recognizing that the travel in its purest sense can't necessarily be entirely sustainable. And in fact, if you look, Intrepid's just reviewed its climate strategy, moving away, for example, from climate credits towards active decarbonisation measures. I think you might see the actual terminology of sustainability move less and less out of the travel vernacular. What it will get replaced by, I don't exactly know, but purpose or impact, I would think, are probably two things that will get referenced more and more.
Can you tell us more about the decarbonization? What does that mean exactly?
Same question.
Yeah, sure. So I guess Intrepid, this dates back a long time, 20 years ago or so. Daryl Wade, our co-founder, had a kind of a lightning moment where he recognized that by people traveling on Intrepid trips, ultimately we're contributing to the climate crisis that was emerging and being talked about more and more. This came as a result of us reading Tim Flannery's book, The Weather Makers, which talked about the impact that travel had. And Intrepid took steps to become a carbon neutral business. It took us 3 years to achieve carbon neutrality. And part of doing that was through carbon offsetting. And that was seen as very revolutionary 15 years ago. It was very kind of cutting edge. But as science has emerged, more and more focus has been placed on the climate crisis. It's become increasingly aware to us that carbon offsetting isn't going to solve the climate crisis. Intrepid was spending close to $2 million a year on ensuring that we're a carbon neutral business. And so we're actually moving away from carbon offsetting with our new focus on decarbonisation. And what we're going to be actively trying to do is just reduce the carbon that we put into the atmosphere as a result of the activities that we have as a result of Intrepid trips. And we've already been doing that to an extent. We stepped away from operating our program to Antarctica, which was our most carbon intensive program that we offered. We've been reducing flights on our trip itineraries where suitable alternative transport options exist. And we've now just about to launch a climate impact fund where we'll be putting the $2 million that we used to put towards carbon offsetting to directly invest in practical emissions reductions projects. So, for example, purchasing of an extended EV fleet. Most of our emissions come through our supply chain, so the training of our supply chain about steps they can take to decarbonising. So, yeah, it's quite a significant pivot that Intrepid is engaging in, but something that we feel pretty strongly about.
So I have a follow-up question to that then. Given the carbon impact of AI, how do you foresee integrating AI into your business in a way that is carbon neutral or carbon sensitive?
Thoughtfully, I suppose, Stephen, is the answer. The truth is we don't know at this stage, and we're not, excuse me for the noise outside.
Yeah, which one of you is about to get arrested?
It's me,
That's
unfortunately. I'm about to get arrested, so apologies for that. It always comes at the most inopportune times. Thoughtfully, Stephen, and truthfully, we don't yet know, and we're only Intrepid is very much focused on human connection, not on digital solutions per se. So while we are adapting some elements of AI at this point, it's not something that we have spent an enormous amount of time investing or focusing in. And if anything, we'll be adopting other people's actions that they take rather than leading from the front there. But yeah, thoughtfully is the answer. And I don't exactly know how, but it will be something that we'll be very closely monitoring as we evolve our decarbonisation strategy.
That's great. Appreciate it.
Yeah, thank you for sharing that. And we've spoken, so we're talking about sustainability, but earlier you mentioning purpose and kind of getting back to that. We've talked a fair bit about like meaningful travel and transformational travel at Arival, and multi-day tours come up a lot in that conversation. So we see them becoming increasingly popular, but this is of course, this is your main area. So why do you think more travelers are getting interested in multi-day trips? Why do you think that is? Are you seeing an increased interest? You talk about growth.
And who are they?
Yeah.
Sure. Well, they're anyone. That's the first one. I think the first thing, just in terms of the market's moving towards us, travelers want, or we're certainly seeing that travelers want deeper, they want more meaningful experiences beyond just ticking off destinations. So small group travel offers structure, it offers flexibility, offers comfort, offers security, offers adventure all in one. And post-pandemic, the kind of ease and intentionality in travel planning were critical, and people wanted expert-led trips and reduced stress to be able to get out and see the world. And to having that real connection with locals, with guides, with fellow travelers is a major driver. So I think that's part of the reason why more and more people are moving to multi-day tours. Who are the customers? They're really diverse. We've got our core Intrepid Traveller, university-educated single female in her mid to late 40s who has a professional job, wants to go out and see the world, but wants to do so in the safety and security of a group. Our second one is that the baby boomer, 50s, 60s, kids have left home, worked really hard for 30 years. They don't want to go on the kind of traditional big tour. They want to get on that more immersive experience. So we're seeing good growth there, particularly in our premium product range. And then the third kind of key category is that first-time traveller. So our 18 to 30s program is growing very strongly at the moment. People are placing more focus around experiences over material possessions and about being able to get out and boast about the things that they're seeing. And it's not necessarily the iconic site, but it's off the beaten track place that only an Intrepid experience can take you. But ultimately, an Intrepid customer, whether you're 18 or whether you're 80, has the alignment of being curious, of being connected, and of being conscious and having a fairly kind of positive outlook on the world and a belief that getting out and having great travel experience is something that should be prioritized above and beyond anything else. So I think that's one of the reasons it's growing. And then the other reason, of course, is just that natural evolution of the product offering that we have. For example, our active travel range is growing very well as people place more importance on physical and personal well-being. So I think our active trips are up about 25% year on year, which is about to introduce, I think it's 28 new active adventures being launched for next year. We're introducing shorter escapes for people that are more pressured around either cost of living or around time-conscious travel or limited paid time off. So we've got new short break travel offerings for people that want those kind of immersive Intrepid experiences, but want to do them a bit closer to home. We're seeing driver of people looking for that off the beaten track destinations. People are always asking me, James, where's the next place that Intrepid's going to open to? And I'm like, well, we operate to 116 countries, so I can't magic up another country, but you know, those kind of far-flung places like Central Asia is showing real popularity at the moment. We're about to open our 32nd office in Uzbekistan early next year. So, yeah, they're also some of the reasons why we're getting this kind of growth because of that movement towards us and then that product expansion.
Wow, that's cool. And I recently read that Canadians don't need a visa to go to Uzbekistan. So that's a bonus.
That is a bonus, absolutely. Get to Uzbekistan. I'm hoping to go early next year to open our office, so I'm excited to go and see it for myself. So hopefully we can welcome more Canadians and indeed travellers from all parts of the world to this beautiful location.
Amazing.
And you've got 116 destinations that you talked, 116 countries, obviously more cities in those countries. But what are your main source markets? Are they North America, Europe? Are they North America, Europe, Australia, presumably as well? Are those your key source markets?
Yeah, it's very geographically diverse in the sense that about 40% of our customers are Aussies and Kiwis. Intrepid was originally founded in Melbourne, so we're pretty much a household name down in Australia now, and particularly in New Zealand as well. About 30% of our customers come from UK and Europe, and about 30% of our customers are Americans and Canadians. So that's the kind of rough split of where our customer base comes from. Probably growing fastest up here in this part of the world in North America. That's one of the reasons I'm spending increasing time in our new office in Seattle and our office here in Toronto, which is seeing lots and lots of growth. The Canadian market this year will grow 35%. So yeah, lots of willingness for people to want to experience our style of travel, which is exciting, but good geographical spread of where our customers come from.
And what about your day tours? Because you launched Urban Adventures a few years ago. How is Urban Adventures going? Are there future plans for that?
Yeah, the Urban Adventures has been through a kind of plotted history over the course of time. It was on a very strong kind of growth curve up until about 2018, 2019. I can't remember the stats off the top of my head, but we're carrying hundreds of thousands of customers on those day tour experiences. We were struggling to get the business into a profitable point, and going into the pandemic, it was an opportunity for us to review that. It's now operating in less cities around the world, but vast majority is being operated by Intrepid's destination management companies. Don't know if your listeners know, but Intrepid has 31, almost 32 destination management companies around that are owned by Intrepid that operate for Intrepid brands, but also for a series of other travel and technology brands. So previously, Urban Adventures were often operated not by our DMC network, but by franchisee partners in the period up until the pandemic. Now, the vast majority of Intrepid's Urban Adventures product is operated by our own destination management companies. And one of the things we've been focusing a little bit on as well is the expansion of that Urban Adventure offering in our home cities where our customers already exist. So typically people think of, I'd go on an urban adventure in Rio or in Hanoi or in Lima or wherever it might be on an Intrepid trip. But actually we have quite an extensive range of urban adventures in places like the US, in the UK, and also in Australia, where our customers are actually from as well. So it gives our customers quite a nice point to be able to travel on an immersive experience locally in their home destination, and or for us to introduce our style of travel to a customer who might not be familiar with small group adventure travel as an introductory version in their own cities or their own countries, to then say, oh, I like this style of travel. I'm going to now, that's given me the confidence to now do the 7-day trip in Peru or the 10-day trip in Italy or Kenya or wherever it might be with Intrepid.
Right. So you hook them with a day tour, and then
you hook them with a day tour.
Signing up for a 3-week trip around Uzbekistan.
That's right. And I think the other benefit of what we've seen increasing with Urban Adventures is that it's a way for us to have a source of inquiry, a source of acquisition for customers, as opposed to getting off Google or traditional brand out-of-home advertising. One of the ways in which we're acquiring more customers is that people are going, we have, I think, carry about 120,000 Urban Adventures customers this year. Those 120,000 customers getting introduced to Intrepid, and because it's now within our DMC network, we're able to remarket to them much more effectively and introduce them exactly to that. Go to Uzbekistan, or maybe the first step, go and do, I don't know, Mexico. You get the idea.
Yeah. Or if they're planning on going somewhere, do an urban adventure while you're there.
Yeah. Indeed. Go big or go home. Let's go to Uzbekistan, Stephen. Okay. So I want to switch gears a little bit. I saw that you were CEO of the Year in Australia. Congratulations. And that's not just for travel, from what I understand. That's just in general.
Yeah, it was a bizarre experience. We turned up at these CEO Magazine Awards and very much hoping we could win the consumer section, and we won the consumer section, then celebrated quite big with a few of the team. And then when it came to the big overall CEO award at the end of the night, we obviously presumed we'd have absolutely no chance. And then to be named, it was beyond our wildest expectations, and an amazing reflection of the team and everything that they've achieved.
So I have to ask you, what's one thing you've learned about leadership along the way that other leaders in the travel industry could benefit from?
there's so many things. If you're going to be a good CEO, you need to learn a lot of things over the last 8.5, 9 years I've been leading the business. Look, I think the one thing often here, I've said a lot, is there's a reason why you have two ears and one mouth, and that's because you need to listen more than you talk. And I think the unfortunate thing for leaders is that many of them get a bit too consumed with their own voices and having to try and assume or prove that they're the smartest person in the room. And I think one of the great things for me growing up at Intrepid was a recognition that I'm certainly not the smartest person. At Intrepid, we talk about wanting people that are humble and a willingness to be hungry and to listen and to improve. And certainly one of the reasons why I've been very fortunate to be successful, I think, during my time at Intrepid is because I've been willing to listen. And I think my job is to set a good strategy that's inspiring, that's ambitious. And then the second job is to make sure I get some super talented people around me. And I think often, particularly young leaders, can sometimes be a bit intimidated around getting smart people around them. But I can assure you that the sooner you get smart, great people around you, typically you start to deliver even better results, and that can reflect really well on you. And I was a pretty young leader in Intrepid. I was group CEO at 35. And when you're a young CEO, you have to go out and recruit great talent. So I got a particularly impressive CFO from one of Australia's leading businesses, ASX 100 on the stock exchange. We've got a great general counsel, an amazing general chief purpose officer who comes with amazing experience. Then we've been able to also develop our talent from within too. So we've got some amazing leaders who've come from all different parts of the business that we've built up through the organization. And it's my job to listen to what those people think and to understand what we need to do and to speak to our customers. And I just think our customers and our team, they have invaluable knowledge and they understand what our customers want and need. And it's my job to listen to them and to make decisions. And I think that the kind of last part I'd just say about leadership is once you've done all of that listening, and listening is great and it's super important, you've got to be prepared to make some decisions. And when you make decisions, you will make mistakes. And again, one of the things that I've certainly learned is not from the good decisions that I've made, but from the mistakes I've made. And there have been plenty. And any good leader who hasn't made a mistake hasn't been a good leader. So you've got to be prepared to make the calls. Decisions often stop with you. And when you get it wrong, you've got to put your hand up, learn from it, and move on quickly to do other things, because it's just part of the leadership experience. So listen and be prepared to make decisions.
Yeah, one of the things I've heard many times with great leaders is that they're quick to take the blame and to take responsibility when things go wrong, and they're equally quick to pass on the credit when things go well or when credit is due. And I think you shared that very articulately when you talked about the CEO awards and you used the word we. You didn't once use
Not
the word
royal
I.
we, but the team we.
But the
right?
team we,
Yeah.
right? Like we were surprised to be acknowledged and receive that award. That was acknowledging you as a CEO, but you were very quick to, it seemed like it didn't even cross your mind that you would say I as we. And I think that says a lot about your leadership style and why you are so successful and why Intrepid has been so successful. So
I think it's a reflection of why Intrepid has been successful. And I think it's a reflection actually of our co-founders, Darryl Wade and Jeff Manchester. You know, that one of the reasons why I got the opportunity to get to be the young leader I have at Intrepid is because of their leadership and the values that they set and the way in which they set up the business. And that's just, you know, Intrepid is very much the success of our team. And the most important people at Intrepid are our tour leaders who spend every day with our customers, and our frontline sales consultants who are the ones that speak to our customers more than anyone else. And they're the ones why we have a great, and as I said, it's our job to listen to those people as much as we can. So yeah, we're lucky to be doing what we're doing.
All the talk about your team, I've met a few members of your leadership team. I've done interviews with a few of them. And one thing that has struck me and honestly really impressed me is you have a lot of women in leadership roles, like high level leadership roles in your company. And they've said things about how they've been mentored from within and encouraged to grow from within. And I think that's a really unique thing, hopefully not unique, but a special thing about your company. So I'm just wondering, from your perspective, how has that kind of shaped your approach, your leadership team, the diversity in your leadership team?
I think a really important thing when you're building teams is you need to have just diversity of overall, you need to have diversity full stop. So that doesn't matter if it's diversity of gender, use the example of male and female there, but also need diversity of age. Can't have people that are just old, kind of people that are just young. I need to have diversity of country background. So I'm from the UK. My head of EMEA is a Moroccan lady, Muslim Moroccan lady. My head of Australia is actually from Zimbabwe originally. My head of technology is from a guy from Sri Lanka. I really just want to have people from different backgrounds and different experiences, because if you think about the most successful teams, and I grew up playing a lot of sport, referenced that right at the start, that if I couldn't be in track, I wanted to be in sport originally, but I wasn't good enough. And if you look at great sports teams, have diversity of team members, don't they? They don't. It doesn't matter what sport you follow. I'm a British soccer fan. So if everyone is the Harry Kane, the kind of centre forward, that might resonate with some of your listeners, means nothing to other of your listeners who's the England soccer captain. But you can't have 11 Harry Kanes on a pitch. You've got to have people that are younger, older, different experiences, different backgrounds. And that's how you get great performing teams. And that's how we think about it at Intrepid when it comes to the group of people that we have. I want to have people that don't just have my personality set, for example. We talk a lot about insights profiling at Intrepid. So red, yellow, blue, and green characteristics. And if I just have people that are like me, which is red and yellow characteristics, it's going to be a disaster. We'll never have a great team setup. So diversity comes in many forms. It comes in the form of age, it comes in the form of religion, country, gender, personality. And that's how we typically have performed very well when we've had teams that come from those different backgrounds. And that's how I think, generate some of the success that we do.
Awesome. Thank you for sharing that. And so to wrap up, as the travel industry continues to evolve and Intrepid continues to grow, what gives you the most optimism about the future of the travel industry? Whether that's in terms of sustainability or experiences sector or what? Where's the happy news?
For me, it's about human connection. We've lived in, for all of us who've last 10, 15, 20 years or so, 20 years ago was the advent of social media, then our mobile devices taking over our lives. Now we're being pushed into certain algorithms. And unfortunately, there is a lot of bad thing that goes on. Mobile phones are supposed to make our lives easier, and they're actually often drawing us apart. And the news environment and news cycle does feel a little bit toxic and difficult. And geopolitically, that certainly feels the case. But I think ultimately what Intrepid does is we obsess about human connection, and we obsess about the beauty and the power of that, and about all of those things I said earlier, getting people out to see the world, to meet local people, to try the food, to experience their culture, to get a better understanding about their way of life. And that's what we do in the travel industry. We bring people together. We provide people with amazing experiences. And I just think increasingly, and certainly I'm the father of a 13-year-old son, and I don't want my son sat on his mobile phone. I certainly don't want him sat on FIFA, PlayStation 5, trying to get his football team to the top of the league, speaking to his friends. I want him out there experiencing the safari that we've just done in Southern Africa, where he gets to see the Big Five, or get to travel through China and talk to our Chinese tour leader about the kind of history of the beautiful country, or the great kind of pizza making class that we did in Italy. That's the power of what we all do in travel, is bring people together and provide human connection. And I think more and more, with the difficulties people are experiencing online, that there'll be more and more of a desire to have those human connections, particularly in the sense of the loneliness pandemic that is upon us as well. So that's why I'm hopeful. That's why I'm optimistic. I want Intrepid to be positioned strongly at the center of that. I believe ultimately that the world needs more Intrepid people, and that's what myself and all of the team at Intrepid, the 3,500 people we have, we're squarely focused on trying to do that.
I love that. Thank you.
Wow.
Yeah.
Hallelujah.
Yeah. Yes.
Let's hope so. Let's hope so.
Yeah, that's right up my alley, and what brought me into the travel industry basically is wanting to make the world a better place through facilitating these kinds of meaningful experiences, human connections. And so yes.
Let's keep making it happen, hey?
Absolutely. Yeah. Anything else before we close, Stephen, from your end?
No, that was such a great way to wrap it up, James. Honestly, it's exactly what we're trying to do at Arival. It's exactly what the experience industry is all about, is providing that in-place human connection, building those types of relationships, making people realize that we are more the same than we are different, and those differences are what makes the world an interesting place.
Absolutely. Yeah, totally. That's what we're here for.
So, amazing conversation. Is there anything that jumps out to you in terms of a highlight you want to dig into a little bit more?
He is just such a genuinely nice guy.
Yeah.
You talk to him, and that was one of the best interviews, I have to say. That was just so much fun. And he's so easygoing. And and I said it in the interview when we were talking, just the focus, like they're so few leaders, maybe that's not true. He's just a very good example of a leader who leads by example
Yeah.
and leads with a very high level of integrity and credibility, right? The whole CEO of the year thing, he doesn't talk about himself winning here.
Yeah,
It's the
I
company that,
for a
that won,
moment, I
right?
was like, "Is he using the royal we to refer to himself?" But no, he was referring
No.
to the leadership award he got as CEO as a group effort of his company,
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
that's
And that says
really
a lot. That says a
yeah.
lot about him and his style of leadership and why I think the company is where it is, because I think the leadership, the CEO drives that culture.
Mhm.
And you can really tell that he is so passionate about what he does and what the company stands for. And he has been able to rally his team, his entire organization behind those core values. And it really shows. And it just makes me want to go take some Intrepid trips.
Yeah.
Hinted. Are we going on an Intrepid trip,
We're all
Janelle, you and I?
I feel like every time
Our next trip?
I feel like every time we talk to a tour operator, we're like, "Okay, we have to do
We're doing
this
that.
trip now."
We've done food tours, we've done the walking tours. We usually try something. So it's just like
Yeah.
Janelle and Steve
We have to
vetting their
commit.
next vacation.
Do we wanna commit to a 26-day Intrepid
Maybe not a
tour
26.
across,
I'm thinking like
I don't
5 or
know,
7 day,
Central Asia or something? Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, Uzbekistan.
Oh, Uzbekistan. Yeah.
Yeah,
Oh,
yeah.
I could check that one off my list for sure. That'd be good. Not that I'm checking off lists. I don't
Okay,
have a
but
bucket list that I'm checking off.
yeah, but
But I
anyway,
am.
so leadership, obviously, like, great
Yes.
human,
Big
great
one.
leader, and it really checks out through the other conversations I've had with leaders as well in
Hmm.
Intrepid specifically. I've done
Yeah.
a few interviews and talked to a few of their staff that are in higher level positions, not CEO, but higher level positions who just have the best things to say about how Intrepid encourages growth of its leaders from within and mentorship
Hmm.
programs and all of that type of stuff. Like they really do invest in their people, and that's always great to see. Yeah. Anything else from the conversations that stood out? We covered so much. Like you managed in
Yeah.
one, I think in one question to cover AI and sustainability,
And
which
sustainability.
is
Yes.
amazing because those
Yeah.
feel like two opposite things, but they are very connected. So yeah.
Well, yeah, because AI is such a huge topic. And I mean, for the last, 3 arrivals, I think AI has been like a constant. In fact, in the last arrival, we had an AI forum,
Yeah.
right? A whole thing dedicated to AI. And everybody's talking about AI and everybody's talking about we need to implement AI, but there is a huge environmental cost to AI, right?
Yeah.
These data centers, we know that they are producing greenhouse gas emissions. They are using tons of water. It's not great for the environment. And yet everybody's still talking about we have to use these things. And for a company like Intrepid that is so focused on sustainability and being good stewards of the environment, how do you square that circle when you want to be able to use these technologies in order to improve customer service, improve discoverability, maybe make your tours better for the people that go on them without having a really negative impact on the environment by using tools like AI, which we know are really hard on the environment? And his answer was, it was a very safe answer, but it was the best one that you can answer in that case, thoughtfully, right?
Yeah.
We'll use it as best we can while mitigating the impact of it on the world, right? So maybe that means only using it sparingly or using it in very specific ways to minimize its impact. Who knows? But it's a good answer, but I think it's something that people need to think about. This is when we talk about, everybody just talks about the benefits, but these AI and the data centers that power AI are having a very, very real negative impact on communities and on the environment in general. And I don't think it's talked about enough.
Yeah. And it gets back to, you use the word minimizing impact or something along those lines. It gets back to
Mhm.
the idea of sustainable travel in the sense of how do we minimize the negative impact of travel
Mhm.
while not just being neutral, because they're moving away from this carbon neutral stance towards travel for good and positive
Yeah.
impacts. And so that idea that, and it often seems like that gets relegated and it's okay, sustainable travel is over here and it's like a nice to have thing if you
Yeah.
have the time or whatever and you feel like doing it a little bit extra. but Intrepid has it worked into the fiber of their
Mm,
organization. And anytime I talk to an Intrepid person, including James, they seem to believe that is why they're successful. It's not just in spite of this or in addition to this, but because of this
it's
is what makes
because of it.
us
Yeah.
who we are. And
Yeah.
you can't argue with the numbers. They're wildly
No.
successful and they're growing. Yeah.
Yeah. It's part of their differentiator. And I think the more build sustainable practices into their businesses, the more it becomes ubiquitous, the more we get away from the need to have to talk about a sustainable option. It's just, if all of the options are sustainable, then there's no need to talk about sustainable options, right? It's just, it is what it is. But we aren't in that place yet. And clearly, based on survey data, people are not, they say that they want to make sustainable choices, but when given the option of a sustainable or an unsustainable option, price wins out. And especially, and now with the way that the economy is, socioeconomic conditions and political
Yeah.
conditions and inflation and all that sort of stuff, we're starting to see people be more price sensitive.
Yeah.
And the cheaper options are going to continue to put a lot of pressure on the environment, I think.
And so then he makes that point that, well, they don't have to make that choice with Intrepid because that just is what they get. They get rolled into the product. Those sustainable things are rolled in. So it's not that they're choosing Intrepid Tour A, slightly cheaper, less sustainable, versus Intrepid Tour B, more expensive, more sustainable. Like they're getting a product
It's
that
one
has
choice.
that. It's
Yeah.
the choice if you choose this company because that's what they stand for and that's what they have worked into their whole ethos of their company. So
Yeah, exactly. And the shift away from carbon credits, right, or carbon offsetting versus travel for good, or just the whole idea of building the company around sustainable practices, I think we're going to start to see more companies doing that, because the offsetting is reactive, right? It's, oh, I'm going to pump out this amount of carbon, so I'm going to go plant some tree. I'm going to go give some money to somebody to go plant some trees to hopefully absorb that amount of carbon and offset it, right? That's the game that you play with offsetting. Is it's a bit of a gamble, right? But if you actually build into the company sustainable practices and you reduce the emissions that you produce in the first place, then you don't have to offset your carbon. And I think that's where they're shifting to, is that whole idea of let's minimize the impact front and maximize the benefits for local communities. That way we don't have to worry about, we'll just pump out as much as we can and then we'll just pay for it. It's basically paying a fine for being a polluter, essentially, is what the carbon offsetting is for. And so it's not a great long-term solution.
We basically need to get to the future of the Jetsons, where we're in flying electric cars. I don't know if they were electric in the Jetsons, but we're in flying cars going on tours that are sustainable. If they made it to the world of flying cars, then they must have done something right in terms of not killing the planet. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
Anyways, yeah. Another thing before we finish off, another thing was just, we talk about the balance between day tours and multi-day tours. And as we're bringing multi-day tours more into the Arrival community, and we had the multi-day in DC, and we're going to be doing we're going to have a multi-day focus going forward in Valencia and onward. I think it's interesting his take on how they balance the day tours and the multi-day tours, and the opportunity that's there for day tour operators to add multi-day or vice versa. There's a lot of crossover opportunity there.
Yeah. And the use of the Urban Adventure brand, which is their day tours brand, to help drive interest and word of mouth advertising, essentially, for their multi-day Intrepid brand. So that's a great, almost using it like a loss leader for their multi-days. Not that it's a loss leader, but
and it makes me think of potential that there is for companies, whether it's adding another type of tour or whether it's partnering with companies to have that type of relationship. Yeah.
Exactly. Those multi-day tours are made up of a lot of single-day experiences that are in destination. So look to work with the multi-day providers and give them something that they can use to differentiate their multi-day tours to their customers.
Yeah. And come to Arrival to meet each other. That's where the magic happens.
Yeah. That's where the magic happens. Yeah. Come find us. We'll go have dinner.
How many dinners can we fit into?
I don't know.
Yeah,
That's 5 days. There's time for
we could have
dinners.
hobbit meals. We'll have like breakfast,
Yeah,
good
exactly.
breakfast, 11sies, dinner, supper. Yeah.
Exactly. Well, and in Valencia, the food will be amazing and there'll be lots of different types of it. So,
Oh
come
my
join us
gosh.
for a little bit of paella or some
Oh,
cheese or
yeah.
whatever. Yeah.
Yeah.
Fresh orange juice. Oh my God, the fresh orange juice. Oh, okay. That is,
Okay.
if there's one reason to come to Valencia and go to Arrival, it's for the orange juice. I'm just
Yeah.
saying. It's that good. All right. Well, I think that brings us to the end of another exciting episode of The Best Part of Travel. Make sure you follow and share this podcast with your friends. We'd really appreciate it. And check out our upcoming Arrival events in Valencia and Spokane in 2026 at Arival.Travel. Thanks so much, Janelle.
Thanks, Steven.